Hello, I am Eric, and
I'm Doug.
this is Learn in Public, where we take our lives and businesses as creators and work together to help each other and hopefully help you. Um, Today, we're pretty excited. This is episode 4, and we got our first listener question this week. So, we're going to get to that at the end of the episode, but actually, other parts of the episode will work towards answering it too. Um, yeah, so I'm in the hot seat this week. So, we're going to hear from Doug for a quick update on what's going on with him. Take it away, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Good to be with you once again this week. Couple quick updates on my end. First, something that's been going on inside of Verbal to Visual. We just wrapped up one of our live course events. So the way I've been running the weekly workshops every Wednesday inside of Verbal to Visual. We have a live Zoom call to address kind of some particular component of sketchnoting. And what I've been doing recently is using those, at least some of those live events, to do kind of a run through of one of our courses. Because we have 8 courses to date
Right.
inside of Verbal to Visual. And it's been fun with these live course events to do kind of the flipped classroom approach, where since the course video lessons are available on demand for people to watch at their own pace, it's been
Hmm.
nice to do these live events where we'll have one event for each unit of the course or kind of whatever spacing makes sense so that folks can dig into the lessons on their own time, and then we meet for Q&A about each unit, and it gives folks some momentum, some accountability, some opportunities for feedback, and a fun chance for me to see like how people are engaging with the kind of learning resources that I created. So we just finished that with a course that I made about making videos. That's kind of one of the applications of
Hmm.
sketchnoting that folks can kind of get into, especially folks who want to do some sort of sharing of the ideas that they're interested in,
Right.
or even just kind of creating presentations for work. So we just wrapped up with that series on making sketchnote videos. And even when we only have like a handful of people that maybe are able to attend each week, half a dozen or so can kind of make it consistently and kind of share their progress. It's still really fun to see kind of the transformation in real time as folks engage with the resources and chat with each other about things they're kind of having trouble with, and then in this case get to the point where they've made a video or two. So we just wrapped up with that one, which was kind of an exciting little milestone and fun to see what comes of that. And what's coming next in November and December, we're going to do a run through of another course that is very much related to what Eric and I do here, which is a course called Learn in Public.
Right.
So for folks who want to create their own learn in public type project, whether it's a solo project or conversations that you're having with other people, in November and December, many of the Wednesday workshop events are going to be all about that course. So I think it's fun timing because one, it's a good kind of follow up to making sketchnote videos because that's
Sure.
about kind of getting your work out there. It also feels like good timing because you and I, Eric, are you know um, early on in the early stages of this learn in public project. So there's some nice kind of synchronicity there.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, that's awesome.
yeah,
I have a question for you. What
yeah.
what would you say was your biggest takeaway from sort of reverse teaching a course you had
Mm,
already made? I'm really curious about that.
yeah. Um, Well, I guess one thing that comes to mind is that I like how it really frees up space to be able to address the specific questions and concerns that students going through that course have.
Hmm.
Um, to the point where if it were a more like typical experience where you kind of have to teach each lesson, within that weekly time slot or whatever the structure of it is, like you have to do all the teaching and then maybe you have like 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. I really like the format where the live events are kind of all Q&A because you get to the core of whatever the questions or the struggles are, and you can spend your time there, as opposed to um, yeah,
Yeah.
having a shorter amount of time.
Yeah.
Um,
So it's pretty much like a mostly a Q&A kind of
yeah,
setup. So
yeah.
so everybody pretty much in the course had done the course before and they were just kind of, redoing again, or was it a split?
Well, in most cases, since each of the events were a week apart, the
Hmm.
idea was that, the week prior to the event, that was the time where you would go through the lessons that
Got
we were
it.
going to address that week.
Got it.
So hopefully, there was time for people to dig into that course for the first time and explore
Right.
those resources and then chat about them. Um, and then another thing that came up, which I think is really cool, and I've seen happen before with any sort of live course, really, is that it's not uncommon for the folks who are able to attend live and work through it together. They want to keep the momentum going. So a handful of folks have started a group chat inside of Verbal to Visual, specifically to like keep sharing updates about how their video creation work is going.
That's
So
so cool.
even just that as a takeaway of like helping people find each other that are interested in a same type of creative work so that they can continue supporting each other, that's like a huge benefit, I think. So
Cool.
that was fun to see.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah,
so great.
yeah.
Yay.
And I'll keep it to that. That feels like a good update for me. And then I'm excited to kind of get going with the next live course in a few weeks here.
Oh, and yeah, and I actually I want to join that one too.
Oh,
So,
awesome.
I didn't make it to the making sketchnote videos live course, but I want to definitely join the Learn in Public one. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
And I want to put it out there to everybody else. If you want to take the first week of it, you can do it for absolutely zero on Doug's site. That's how he hooked me in.
That free week-long trial,
He'll
it,
let
it
you try
works.
it for a week, and
It works.
it's enough to know whether or not you're going to love it. And I definitely did. So definitely, I want to encourage you, come join us.
Yeah.
In November and December. Um, so this week in the hot seat, I am yeah, I'm still sort of mulling over what this new rework of my main business is, which is the podcast that I do, the sleep podcast. Um, it's going to go through some changes in an attempt to be both a better version of what it is and closer to my vision of what I would like to be doing. So I want to
Mm.
bring those two things together. Um, and my tendency is always to go, oh, I know what it is, and to have a big idea and want to just blow everything up and do that big idea.
Mm.
And that was my first tendency this time too. So I'm in the stepping back part where I guess I should fill everybody in. If you don't know, I have a sleep podcast, and what I do is I read a story from the public domain every week, and I do a meditation um, that is not from the public domain. At first, I was using some scripts that I had bought online when I was first learning how to guide meditations, but I've been doing that for a year now, and I took a class to get better at it and to get certified as a meditation teacher. So now I do my own. there's a couple of things that are missing from this universe of my, let's call it my product. This is my main creative endeavor, my main business, everything. Um, I have always wanted to have more original content and not just be doing stories from the public domain for two reasons. It's challenging after over 200 episodes to find more stories from the public domain that I want.
Mm-hmm.
And second, I am like a closet writer. I've always wanted to write more, but I was afraid to. And I've been moving through a lot of fear barriers in my life. And I feel like this is the next one that needs to fall. So I was going to just start writing everything, but I realized that's too big of a change right off the bat. And there may be other, like some people who don't like it or they don't want a change that abrupt. And that makes sense to me. So I'm going to start doing some combination to start with.
Mm-hmm.
But and this is where I feel like I have a solid footing. But where I could use some help, Doug, is I need to move the meditations somewhere because they have evolved in a way where most sleep meditations are effectively visualizations. They're like you're laying on a beach, it's beautiful, you can hear the sound of the surf. They're just meant to like give your mind a little something to gently chew on while you fall asleep. The purpose of actual meditation, is to be more aware of your surroundings and not to be falling asleep. So they're a little antithetical.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more interested in the kind of meditation that has all the benefits that come with meditation, not just a visualization to put you to sleep. So I'm realizing that while there are a bunch of people who like the podcast for the meditations, and they do work for putting people to sleep, I think, um, I want to sort of focus on making them the best they can be. So I'm thinking what would work would be to peel them out into a community of sorts where it's more about what I was just talking about that moving through fear barriers.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that that is one of the highest values for meditation in my own life. And I think it might be a good baseline way to explain meditation and the value of it to people who are just getting into it. I'm interested in your thoughts on this so far.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I like what you're getting at, first of all, in terms of like the deeper purpose behind what it is that you're creating and how well the format aligns with the purpose. Um, and even just thinking about, is it just something to put people to sleep? Uh, which is a valuable thing to create. Is that what you want to keep creating? Is that like the focus of what you want to create, or is it this awareness piece that it sounds like is
It's
kind of
definitely
more
both,
resonant with you, and it
right?
could still be both.
I want the
Um,
stories to do the sleep part, and then I want the meditation. I want the meditation feels like a bad fit now, you know?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And ultimately, I started it for three reasons. One, I wanted to practice because I was getting certified as a mindfulness teacher. Two, I thought it would be good to add it to the podcast. And three, it's just, it was going to be more content, just generic, just put more stuff out there. Um, Now I feel like the most important thing is that it be what it is, because I think the stories do a great job of putting people to sleep. Um, but I also realized that when my first venture out into taking this audience of people who are there for sleep and doing a mindfulness offering to them wasn't successful.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it was that the offer wasn't right or that this audience maybe isn't going to want that. Um, I'm not really sure. So what I'm trying to do now this week, I was just writing the intro to the podcast this week. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
ask people, hey, this is what I want to do. What Get in touch with me. Let me know what you think. Um, so that's where I'm at right now. Uh, and and this all does tie into our question that's coming at the end. It's really just, it's this balancing of my own personal priorities with what I think will make the best product that my business sells. Because
Mm.
ultimately, all of this stuff, if it isn't good for the people who are using it and it isn't good for me, it's not, like I might as well do something different. This is why I'm doing this.
Yeah. I like that about aligning your product with your priorities.
Ooh, yeah, look at you making cool marketing terms.
Hey, you're the one who said it. You brought all that in right there.
Oh, this is
Um
the best part of sketchnoting. I get to hear the stuff I said when I wasn't even thinking.
yeah, no, I think that's a benefit of sketchnoting and also just having conversations with other people where they can like echo back what resonates.
Sure.
I feel like that has already happened for us quite a bit in our conversations. Um and I think it's really smart for you to reach out to your community, to share what you're thinking about and what you see as, yeah, the different directions you could go. Um, uh, yeah, because it does feel like different things. The goal of helping people get to sleep is different from the goal of developing, a deeper sense of awareness and the moving through your fears.
Right.
So to create, and here's a question for you, and I think this maybe is what you're figuring out still. Do you think you want to try to fit both of those into the same podcast still, or potentially have two different projects to
I
address
think the
each?
meditations have to go,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
which is scary on a couple levels, right? Because it is like half of my content. I put out 2 episodes a week. Um, and some of
And
those
they're separate.
people,
I feel like I should know
right,
this already, but I don't. So is the you said you put out 2 episodes a week. Is one a story and another a meditation, or do they
yes,
all have a story and meditation?
no, they're one's a story, one's a meditation.
Got it.
Um, so what I want to do is focus on
Mm,
stories for the podcast.
yeah.
Um, and then I don't know if I want to create a meditation podcast though, because there's so many meditation podcasts out there
Mm-hmm.
already. And I don't know that I want to get on a schedule of creating a new meditation every week. I feel like I'd rather go a little deeper and maybe in another direction with the meditation side. Um, so all of these things are kind of all percolating right now,
Mm-hmm.
and um, it's a sorting process and a kind of partly waiting for the answers to come through conversations like the one we're having today, um, and that I have with other mentors and friends of mine, and then just letting it sort of bubble up from inside of me too. Because even
Mm-hmm.
if it's the wrong thing, but I try what's right for me, I've done that enough now that I know that it will lead to the next thing and the next thing, and eventually something sticks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. No, I think that's totally true. Um, and it seems like you are taking the steps to get it outside of your head a little bit and give other people the chance to interact with it and like um, kind of, yeah, have a bit of a feedback loop to help you see where it might go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that the um, probably or potentially not doing a meditation podcast, and you also mentioned, I think you alluded to on the meditation side is maybe leaning more into community, and
Yeah.
this brings up a kind of general approach to creative work. It's kind of like the content versus community balance, which I think is really interesting.
Hmm.
Where your podcast so far has been like you on the content side. Like you've been the one making this content 2 times per week for 3 years. And there are some community elements built in terms of like you've got a Patreon. I'm sure like people are engaging with your work, but it's still you
Mm,
creating
yeah,
or
not
maybe
much,
not
really.
engaging other,
No, because
other
the
than maybe
Patreon isn't
listening,
like that. It's really
Yeah,
just like it's the ad-free version of the podcast.
gotcha.
That's pretty
So
much
then
what
it is
happens
kind of
there.
like that is a pure content approach to
Yeah.
this work. But then I think it's really intriguing to think about it. Well, what if it was a community first approach?
Right.
Um, do you have any sense for what that might look like? And what is that true as you think about where you want to go with the meditation side of things, having it be more of a community first thing as opposed to you creating content thing, and anything percolating about what that might look like?
Well, yeah. I mean, it was going to, my idea was to have a sort of a mindfulness based community that I was going to do around the whole awaken your myth philosophy that we talked about, I think, in episode 2,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the pillars of that kind of method that I've used my whole life to kind of for all this kind of stuff, and I'm using it all right now. Um, but I also don't feel like that is actually it right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's something else. There's something that's missing, and I
Mm.
do feel like it has something to do with this moving through fears thing. Um,
Well, yeah. One scenario that pops up for me, I'll just throw out there, and I'm curious to hear how it hits you. Is so you've already uh, over the past 3 years of the podcast, you've written a bunch of meditations. Like one format for a community type setup would be, what if it was just you lead a weekly meditation, and it could even be just repurposing meditations that you've already written. Or I don't know if there are meditations that are in the public domain that you can use, but it's
oh,
less, the community is less about just putting out those meditations and more about giving people the opportunity to respond to them, to
right,
share what's coming up in them, to actually do
right.
that moving through in community with like your support as the person putting out the meditations, but the community then to support each other by sharing what's coming up and uh, going from there.
Yeah, and that's something I think I would really enjoy. And I can do those meditations just off the top of my head. Really,
Yeah.
just we can get together and I could guide meditations and just pick kind of a new theme every week, and then also
Yeah.
have um, have the ones from the podcast that people could
Mm-hmm.
still, there's 35 or 40 meditations up there. Um, so
Mm.
I just, like it comes down to I don't know this market very well,
Mm.
and it is different than the podcast. And I have had some, trying to sell my first mindfulness course. It didn't go very well. The people
Mm-hmm.
who were on who were podcast listeners didn't convert to being mindfulness class people. Um, And I don't know if that was because it was too expensive, it was $50, but I mean, I even offered scholarships. So I don't think the money was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I really feel like it's just I'm not explaining it. I'm not explaining what I'm offering well. And I think the moving through fears is really the
Mm.
biggest benefit I've gotten from my own personal mindfulness and meditation practice.
Yeah.
And that ability to move through the fear that's in front of us at any given time is valuable in every area of life, right? Um, and it's something I think we can all relate to. And there are ways, methods to do that that work.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, and a lot of them are mindfulness based, and some of them come into play with that. With the awaken your myth pillars of doing it that way. Um, so yeah, so
Mm.
I'm it's like a puzzle right now, and
Mm-hmm.
there's no one way. Like I've got to try something else to make it work because and I might have to fail a few more times. Um, but it's important to me, and so
Yeah.
that kind of makes it feel okay to like,
Yeah.
okay, what if I screw it up again? Oh well.
Yeah. Yeah. And but you still have the you have the foundation from which to experiment, and kind of no matter what you do in this course community experimentation, you still have that foundation of your podcast and the work that you've done over the past 3 years that's like still gonna be there. So
Right.
it's not like these experiments are gonna like uh, cause a major blow to your work or your business or anything like that.
True, which is
Um,
important, when you're making changes to something that works,
yeah,
for the benefit of both the people who it's working for and your own benefit.
yeah,
Um, you kind of there's a lot to weigh. I- I'm wondering, you have a successful community, so I've kind of been thinking. I do have the everyone who's a Patreon supporter. There's 600 of them. Um, I could invite them. They're my kind of my
mm,
biggest fans, so to speak.
mm-hmm,
I could invite them to a free community and do a certain amount of just letting people know what's up and having I know that Mighty Networks recommends against this highly,
yeah,
um,
they do.
but I'm I know that other people do it, and I'm thinking it might not be a bad way to get it started and then allow people who want to pay for more stuff,
Mm,
um, to do that. It's just I don't have a clear idea of uh, what that would look like, and I also
yeah,
know that these people are already paying between $3 and $5 a month for
right.
what they're supporting the podcast with.
Yeah, yeah.
Your
Well,
thoughts, Mr.
it's
Community Manager?
well, I think I generally do agree with Mighty Network's suggestion of uh, starting with a free community, um, generally like not being the best route,
Mm-hmm.
uh, and especially considering that like current customers are almost your best like future customers too, right? Like people who I think I've seen this within verbal to visual, people who bought one course, they're going to be the most likely ones to buy the next course you make out that you put out, as opposed to someone who's just coming across your work.
Good point.
Um, so I like the idea of maybe starting from your uh, a group of patrons and maybe just starting to engage more on Patreon. Try to use that as a space to maybe like have some conversations, or even you mentioned, with the intro of a recent podcast, you shared some of the things you're thinking about. Maybe try to like highlight that and create the space within your Patreon kind of community to have those conversations.
Doug, that's a
And
brilliant
then,
idea because Patreon is technically a community app. I
yeah,
just really haven't been using it that way. And it's not a great one even for that. But I
right.
could have the Patreon be my free, effectively free community that has
Yeah.
people who are paying and engage with them and offer them the what's going on in the other community. Um,
Yeah. And that can be the place where you pitch the other thing you have going on, whatever that ends up looking like. And I mean, it could even just continuing to talk about the mindfulness course. Is that I assume, or are you still going through with that? That's still a thing that's happening. The mindfulness course that you've been mentioning.
no, I canceled it.
Okay,
Yeah,
you decided to cancel
there was
that. Not enough interest, and
so little interest that I just
okay,
canceled it. I sent the people who there were 4 people who signed up, and I sent
gotcha.
them all a nice email and some
Yeah.
free downloads, and was like, "Hey, this didn't go the way I had hoped," and I'm you know I'm definitely going to do something again in the future. And
Hmm.
I offered to like have a chat with all of them and, explain some of the basics of mindfulness and all that. But I realized that, yeah, it didn't work because it wasn't right.
Mm.
So I thought it's better I'm going to forget about that and move on.
Yeah.
Um, so that's where that is.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. Um, I can see that. Uh, Sometimes I feel like to um not to uh contradict that decision because I think that decision felt like the right one.
Yeah.
When part of what's been going on in my mind as we've been talking about this is kind of the merger of what course and community can look like. I mean,
Right.
I've whenever I talk about Mighty Networks, that's always like what I describe as the reason that I went to that platform is because it does a really good job of merging those two things together, and how the what Mighty Networks suggests, and actually the way that I've run most of my courses is going through kind of iterations with any individual course. And the
Hmm.
first time I do it, it's a live in person experience, or like not in person, but via Zoom, uh, as opposed to the first time I make a course, instead of me doing all the pre recorded lessons and putting them out there and hoping that people like them, I do them as workshops first, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
I do a lot. So,
Yeah.
like, I was thinking about how that could be a way to experiment with what you want to do around teaching mindfulness,
Yeah, no,
where,
I get what you're saying. Absolutely. And this was a big part of the reason why I was thinking about just doing it anyway, like
yeah,
with even one person.
yeah.
Except what it ultimately came down to was that I had kind of picked a very generic topic. And
Mm,
that
I
was
get you.
part of what I just didn't want to teach this generic basic mindfulness class. I was
Yeah.
like that I think I went too wide. I didn't niche down enough like they always say, you can't be too general.
Yeah.
And I just thought, well, let's just dip the toes into the water with a generic basic mindfulness class. And that was ultimately what I decided. My
Mm.
heart wasn't in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and what I really wanted was I, to rethink that and go a different way. Um, and I could teach a lot of those.
What was the title of the course that
Um,
you decided to pull away from?
it was terrible. It was mindfulness masterclass.
Gotcha. Yeah. So kind of like mindfulness 101.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It was just
Yeah.
like, and looking back now, it's easy to see. Oh God, what were you thinking? Um, What was I thinking? But I definitely agree with what you're saying. And I went through a couple of weeks of just going kind of
Mm-hmm.
back and forth about it till ultimately one of my friends who's a great coach and we were talking and she's like, what's your gut on this? Like, do you want
Mm-hmm.
to do this or do you not want to do this? I'm like, I definitely don't want to do this. She's like, then
Yeah.
cancel it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great advice. And
So
yeah, I love how you described so well too, like the recognition of it being too generic, and then also recognizing that this piece about moving through fears is what you actually want to focus on and help other people through.
yeah,
It's a good
yeah.
direction. Yeah.
So now I just kind of have to see where all this pans out. And I
Yeah.
think that is probably a great segue to moving into our final segment, which is our first
Yeah.
listener question.
And it ended up in kind of just the right spot too. Um, Shout out to, I could be wrong on pronunciation here. I'm going to go with Fredo. Fredo Dreesen, perhaps. Shared a couple of lovely comments on the YouTube channel, one of which was this question here, which I will read out, and then Eric and I will share our takes on it. Fredo says, both of you guys seem to be really widely reasonable, capable of resonance with a lot of different topics, ideas, plans, visions, situations, and deeply enthusiastic, which is something I can relate to a lot, and committed. My question would be how you manage to remind yourself of what is your priority at the moment, how you decide on that priority in the first place, and ultimately how you say no to 99% of the potential that is right in front of you but needs to be let go of in order to at least follow through on one thing. Um, yeah, so deciding what to prioritize in this landscape where there is so much that you could be spending your time on.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I already talked a little bit about that. So how about if you start the ball rolling there with the way you do it?
Yeah, yeah. So I think the main way that I've approached this is I've tried to create consistent containers. Is one way that I've thought about this. By containers, I mean like what are the spaces that you've set up um, within which to share your work or to put your work out there. So I've kind of already talked about some of these things too within this conversation. One of those containers that I think about for me is the YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
So like I know that at least once a week or so, I want to put out a YouTube video. Um, Sometimes I try to shoot for like two a week. It's kind of the current pace that I'm considering. So that's one place where there's some form of a deadline. So part of this kind of comes down to deadlines and commitments. So the YouTube channel is one of those for me. I mentioned the Wednesday workshops that go on inside of Verbal to Visual. That's a place for me to chat with the people that I am hoping to support with my work, to
Mm-hmm.
hear how things are going for them, to give them the space to chat with each other. And right now, with this show with Eric, we have this chat each week. I tend to think of it like on a weekly basis. So like what are the things that I'm committing to each week that kind of like align with the purpose of my work and what I'm interested in. And for me, the through line across all of my projects here is this using visuals to explore and try to understand and in some case communicate ideas. That's
Mm-hmm.
what I teach in verbal to visual. That's what I use during our conversations here to kind of capture what we're going through. So there are these spaces that I know I want to put work out in every week. But then there's flexibility within each of those I can make a YouTube video about pretty much anything I want as long as it has some connection to visual thinking. And even if it's just the sharing of some topic that I sketchnoted, no matter what that topic is, I can
Hmm.
still kind of use it to reflect on the sketchnoting process. Um, so that helps to kind of like narrow, that puts a little bit of the constraint around what is the priority.
Right.
But then I think it's also important to have enough flexibility or enough time left over to spend like whatever caught your eye, spend time on like whatever caught your eye today or this week that you want to just like experiment with. Um, so that's the other piece is just, um, yeah, having some time left to follow wherever your curiosity is leading you in that moment.
Yeah.
So for me lately, that's been kind of like a new long form video format on YouTube. Uh, Long form and somewhat slower paced, which I'll probably be chatting about that again soon because I'm still enjoying that, but I know there's some refinement to be had in ways I'm making things there, and also like experimenting with YouTube Shorts.
Hmm.
Um, these are things that kind of like I don't have to be doing. They're not like directly related to kind of the main things that they might be a little bit, but like they're the things that I'm interested in, and it's often like kind of the second when I think about the second half of my workday, what do I want to do? I
Yeah.
try to like get the important things done first, and then leave space for like what do I feel like doing next.
Hmm.
Um, and it's in that realm of like, ooh, if you have enough time to dedicate to what do I feel like doing, that's where you get to do the exploring. And then, hopefully in the first half of your workday, that's when you um, kind of finish or spend time on what you've already committed to.
Right.
So that's a little bit how I think about that balance.
It feels like a
Um,
reward too, which is really nice.
Absolutely.
Having that unstructured time to work on, like if I could refine this or create this, what would that look like? What would that be? So yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And unstructured time is one of my favorite parts of the day.
You mentioned how that's something you try to like build into your daily routine, so to speak, right?
Hmm.
What does that look like for you?
Uh,
Like unstructured time is a good way to.
yeah, it's really just have like I on top of what I was talking about before, just making sure that everything is good for me and good for the business. Like that's the first check on everything.
Mm,
Like, is this what I want to be doing? And is this in line with like the business? And sometimes I'm not going to know, right? Like right now, I've got this new meditation thing. I don't know what that's going to look like business wise, but that's okay. So that's
hmm
sort of half in my unstructured time where I'll just go through new ideas or, try things out or, just wait for inspiration basically. Um, but on a daily basis, I set my list. I use Things 3, which is a great uh, to-do list app.
mm,
Um, and I set my to-do list of all the stuff I have to do, and then Things has a like a sometime setting. So I'll throw ideas I'm kicking around in the sometime setting, and then when I have unstructured time, I'll go into the sometime setting and be like, which of these things do I want to? Which looks most
mm.
interesting to me right
I
now?
like that.
Um,
So you
so
have like when that unstructured time comes up, and like if there's not immediately something that you want to think about or and explore, you have that list of like things that have caught your eye, or like an idea that came to you that you've jotted down. Like that's when you go into that list and like pick something to explore. Is that
yeah,
right?
yep,
That's really cool.
yeah. So that's pretty much, yeah. That's all. I guess that's all I got to add to that.
Do you feel is that unstructured time? Um, I know you mentioned like how often you enjoy going on long walks in the woods. Is that a go-to component of that unstructured time, or is
No,
some of
that's
it just at
structured
home?
time.
That's
That like
structured time. Okay.
that's in
Interesting.
every that gets budgeted into every day. Yeah, because that's the kind of thing. That's why I live here, and I need that for my own well-being, really.
Yeah.
Plus, my dog needs it. Um, so no, the unstructured time is literally just like, no, I don't have anything to do right now.
Mm, right.
And I know that sounds like a crazy thing to a lot of people, but it's just always been really important to me, and it's one of the main reasons that I do what I do, so that I can have that time to, yeah, like you said, to play,
Yeah.
to just let these ideas come, and it just feels like what I need to be my best self.
Yeah. I feel like we all have unstructured time. Um, but it's like I feel like these days it's so easy to not recognize the unstructured time we have because with any gap that comes up, like it's so easy to go to our phone or like it's easy
Mm,
to fill the unstructured time without really thinking about it.
it's true.
And sometimes it's like uh, bad habits or, you know, if there was a little bit of like space to stop or think about it, you might choose to spend that time a little bit differently. I notice
Yeah.
myself falling into that trap all the time, like
Yep.
in the middle of the day or at the end of the day, like, um, yeah, kind of defaulting to passive consumption essentially
Sure.
with any unstructured time that I have, as opposed to
I think
doing
that's a
something a
really
little
good
bit
point.
different.
It's important to guard your unstructured time and not let, like TikTok take it away, because TikTok wants your unstructured time
Oh yeah.
maybe more than you do.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well,
So,
and that's the thing too. Even like I mentioned, exploring YouTube Shorts. Part of
mm,
that has meant like watching a lot of YouTube Shorts and just
right.
seeing like it's only been within the past couple of weeks that I like looked at YouTube Shorts at all.
Yeah. And that's
So
effectively TikTok,
yeah, no,
you
absolutely.
know.
But then like it's so easy for me to get sucked into it and like for it to fill that unstructured time. And so I
Yeah.
have to be a little careful. It's like, okay, yeah, I want to know what's going on here because I want to create things for that platform, but got to be careful not to get sucked in.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually,
use the platform and not let it use me, I
that's
guess
another
is what.
thing we should probably have maybe my next hot seat. I'll talk about social media, because
Mm-hmm.
riding that TikTok account to 500,000 followers last year was the strangest experience. And like now I'm thinking about, just I mean I hardly use it, so that whole,
mm,
and I
that's
noticed I
interesting.
had a short recently that popped over 1,000 views for the first time, and I was like, oh damn, there's that little tickle where it's like the algorithm's trying to get you to make more.
Yep.
But having done that ride now, I have some
Mm.
sense of how to deal with that.
Yeah. No, I'd be curious to get your thoughts on that because yeah, that's a level of success on a platform that I've never experienced, and um,
and was ultimately next to meaningless, in almost every way.
mm,
Really, I mean, it's like yeah. Unless you want to be an influencer, doing
hmm
that, yeah, we could definitely talk more about it. So
yeah, yeah.
we'll put a pin in that.
Well, that sounds good, and I feel like that also kind of will fit in with one of the things we'll be exploring in verbal to visual around learning in public, because one of the questions is, okay, you want to put your work out there, where are you going to do that? And what are the opportunities and the dangers of any particular platform? Um,
Yeah,
yeah, so that I think that'll be a good discussion to have.
cool. All right.
Feel like we've done a good job with this discussion though.
Yeah.
Um,
What did we
so maybe
learn
we
today?
can wrap it up for this week. I think from what you shared, I learned kind of the value of one, following your gut, both in terms of when something feels wrong and when something feels right. You know, not being afraid to pull back from a previous commitment or decision if it starts to not feel right, and then continue listening to your gut. But then also, like, what I feel like you're doing here is you're putting these feelers out in the direction of what feels good to your gut, and like allowing for space for it to evolve, um, and for other people to give you feedback, to help identify kind of what comes next, in this
Mm-hmm.
case within the realm of the specific type of meditation work and support and teaching that you want to do. I think it was really cool to hear about that experience.
Cool. Yeah, and definitely what I learned was that I really do need to consider the community I already have, which is the 600 people on Patreon, as a community, and not just try to move them to another place with
Mm-hmm.
a free community that goes against all the best practices for creating a community, but to engage them where they're at, and like ask, also let them help me figure out what they need, that I
Yeah.
that I have to bring. Um, because I know that they will be happy to do that, and I will be too. And it's definitely one of those ones. Like, as soon as I heard you talking about that, I was like, yeah, oh God, of course, for sure. It's one of those answers you just sometimes don't see yourself, that somebody has to point out,
Mm,
um, which is again what I just love about these meetings with you. We're better together.
absolutely. Yeah.
So
No.
thank you.
Oh no, I'm glad that that clicked with you, and I echo that sentiment entirely.
Yeah.
Um, if listeners or viewers would like to have their own question appear on our show here to have Erik and I chat through, because it's a benefit to us too. Like, to have to think through a question that someone else has asked, I feel like that refines how we think about and approach the work also.
It
So we'd
sure
love
does.
when questions or feedback or comments come in. You can share that with a YouTube comment on our latest video. Are there comments on Spotify, Erik? What's the best way to like respond if folks are listening rather than viewing?
Um, actually, I have to ask a question, and
Mm,
I've forgotten to ask the question. Then they can send in an answer. So I will
gotcha.
do that this week. Yeah, of
Cool.
course. I think the best place is YouTube, because then more other people will get a chance to see it too.
Hmm.
The comment section in Spotify isn't visible to other people, so when you submit
Yeah.
a question there, no one else can see it. So I think we could
Interesting.
really just go with YouTube.
Okay.
Yeah, like
Yeah. Let's stick
put it
with
in
YouTube
YouTube,
as the place.
because that way we can have our little, this community can get a
Yeah.
chance to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that. It's also
Okay.
interesting that like podcasts have not leaned into kind of the commenting aspect of it's a very like podcasts are just like different than video. In some ways
Yeah.
and in some ways not, but like yeah, it's just interesting to see what the Spotify app looks like compared to the YouTube app, and
Hmm.
what engagement looks like, and
Yeah. Podcasts
that's
are
a topic
basically
for
time
another day
shifted
maybe.
radio. You know,
That's a great way
you
to describe it.
you get to choose what you want to listen to when, but it's not really meant for the community side of it, which is one
Yeah.
of the things I love about YouTube. So
Yeah. So go share with us your latest thoughts and questions on the YouTube channel, and tune in next week for some more good discussions.
with
Thanks,
Doug in the
Erik.
hot seat.
Yep. See what comes up. Never know.
All
All right.
right,
Thanks,
Doug.
everyone.